All right, guys, welcome to episode 73 of the Neverland Podcast. Today, got a super dope guest, man. We got Ishaan on. He's worked for, or he is working with Bleacher Report, BR Kicks. He has his own stuff going on. Whole lot of dope stuff, man. But first of all, Ishaan, thank you for coming on. And the first question I
Yeah,
like to
appreciate
ask
it, man.
all my guests is your personal top five, your top five artists.
Oh, okay. Just in general or like music
just
specifically? Just
in general.
okay. I mean, it's a good question to kick things off with. I love the energy. I think like it's a great way to tell like where people's heads
Exactly.
are at. So I think my answer to that question, probably would key in on the word artist, right? I think like I don't know exactly what the etymology of it, but like I feel like I've read somewhere that it's a lot about like cultivating, like a creative vision. And so that's going to be like the basis for my answer. I think looking at it from that perspective, a desert island top 5 artists of all time, would probably, I'd start with Kanye. I feel like you can't go wrong with that. I mean, all other things aside, just from artistic vision, I'll throw Kanye in there.
Yeah.
Just on the strength of My Beautiful Dark Twisted Fantasy alone.
True.
But I think just, sticking to that background of cultivation, I think like, just his influence on Travis, like bringing Cuddy and giving like that spotlight, like the influence he's had on Tyler, the Creator, or Frank Ocean, all these other artists that I listen to all the time. Like Kanye's always in my top 5. I think number 2, I'd probably go maybe somebody like Jay Dilla. I mean, just from the production side. And I think like that's one of those things where it's like, going back to Kanye, like I've heard interviews where he's like, I'll make a beat and I'll try to ask myself, like, would Jay Dilla have been proud of this? Like, I think like getting that from somebody like a Kanye is like such an ultimate form of respect. Like, same with like, Outkast has spoken about like Jay Dilla and his influence on like just the sounds of, lo-fi hip hop that him and like June Seba and all these guys have like popularized. I think from a production standpoint, that's super clean. Like this dude literally made donuts on his deathbed. I think his beats are, his loops in general, like the way that he samples things and the way that he like arranges them and gets it to sound cohesive, I think is really impressive. Like, I don't think that you get like, Kanye's hip hop, like chipmunk soul without that like influence. I don't think you get like, even Travis's like kind of spacey, like Astroworld, he's getting like organs to do the intro of Sicko Mode. Like, I think that influence is sprinkled in so many different places. So I'm going to go Jay Dilla number 2. Number 3, I'll probably take another, like, so in like late high school, I had like senior year, I had a phase where I was heavy into classical rock. And like I had a friend who like dropped me a hard drive and it was just filled with like Rolling Stones, like, top 500. And like, it literally had the discography of like the Beatles and Pink Floyd and everything. And like all these like Electric Light Orchestra, and he just like here copy it and have all these songs. And so I went through a heavy phase of that. And I think Jim Morrison and the Doors make my top artists of all time. Like, I think even like, I mentioned like I love guys like Travis, like hearing that psychedelic rock influence from the Doors in, modern artists. I love that. So like, plus I think he's also the epitome of like one of these like prototypical, like, doing LSD and then going up on the stage and just like just a prototypical rock star. Like, I think that he's one of those guys. And what's weird is I remember, so this for I think this was senior year of high school. There was like a total solar eclipse that was happening. And so like for all of lunch hour, I remember they had like, oh, you guys can go outside with your little like cameras or whatever. And like those boxes that you make for eclipses to be able to see them properly. And everybody was like outdoors and like they were looking through their boxes and the eclipse was happening. And me and my boys, we broke into the auditorium and the Doors have a song called This Is the End. And we like commandeered the like speaker system and we just started playing this song. And it's kind of eerie. But like, I was going through a heavy Jim Morrison phase, so he'd probably be my number 3. So like you know, Kanye, obviously, like Jay Dilla, like I think a lot of different influences, and my 4th guy would probably be even more out of left field. So during quarantine, I've been doing a lot of like Disney Plus, Netflix, like Hulu, all that stuff, just like everyone else. I did Tiger King. I did like the Last Dance, everything. My current kick has been watching all these like Walt Disney documentaries on Disney Plus.
Oh, nice.
So there's one about, I think it was like Waking Sleeping Beauty. And it was about the Disney Renaissance and like all these movies from the 90s that we like, they're iconic, right? Like Aladdin, you know, The Lion King, like the ones that really brought them back to prominence. And I went on this like deep YouTube wormhole about this composer, Howard Ashman. And this is probably just like recency bias. I'm going to throw him in my top 4 because screw it. But like he literally came up with like all these. So basically he was a guy from Broadway, and he brought all this influence from the stage, and you know, just these like theories about like what the main character should be saying and the protagonist. So he introduced the concept of an I Want song to Disney movies. Like you know, you have Part of Your World in The Little Mermaid, or like I Just Want to Be King in The Lion King, where it's like the main character will proclaim what they want and you root for them the rest of the way. That wasn't a thing in Disney movies until like this guy Howard Ashman came around. And there's literally like archival footage of him like in these meetings talking to like Disney animators, like, oh, we should tell the story this way because, you know, like adding actual like character storytelling backbone. Not to say like they didn't have that before, but like I you know, I think when you're adapting any of these like old children's stories to a movie, it's like this medium where you're expressing so much through animation. And so like having the imagination to like write those songs for them to be so iconic, I'll throw them in my top 4 just in terms of like what that's cultivated. Because you don't have a Marvel universe. Like Disney doesn't become anywhere near as big as it is without that influence. Like 100%. I think it was Roy Disney. So he said that Howard Ashman, and he's like, this is blasphemy for me to be saying this, but he's like, I think that Howard Ashman is the second coming of Walt Disney, and like for him to say that about his, you know, brother, such high praise for somebody, but like he had that much creative influence. So I put him in my like top 5 artists.
Dude, just in terms of, I just realized I have fucking Mickey Mouse on.
Oh, there you go.
Like, it's like,
well, like you hear Kanye talk all the time about like all these like Oprah, Steve Jobs, like Walt Disney, like I know Kobe in his, you know, Mamba Mentality book, he used to talk about how big of an influence Walt Disney was as well. And I think from an artistic perspective, if you're creative, you have to appreciate just the empire that he's built. Like, you know, we go crazy over Travis doing like the McDonald's collaboration. Like Disney has been doing that. Like they had Happy Meals with like every character. Like you could buy Aladdin merch immediately. They did like parades. They turned a movie into a Broadway show.
Like, I mean, in terms of Disney, it's like, I think me and Parks probably Googled it one of these episodes, but we were just like the monopoly that they have. Like they own ESPN. Like there's no basketball without Disney.
Like, I mean, they're playing. The bubble is in Disney World.
In Disney
like,
World. Like, bro, like, dude.
No, so I think that what Disney has done and like what he built in terms of like, you know, not just the animation studio, but like the theme parks, everything is amazing. But like I think Howard Ashman as an artist, what his influence was as a filmmaker, as a playwright, and as just, you know, somebody who inspired other artists, I think is crazy. I think he passed away in 93. So he was one of the early deaths associated with the AIDS epidemic. So his vision was not like fully seen out, but like you can see his influence in like all of these movies. And he was also apparently one of the people that helped push them to work with Pixar. And so like, you know, he kind of apparently helped, you know, Toy Story come to be, and like, you know, I think Pixar just as much, you know, for any creative.
Dude, you know, I definitely have to watch that documentary now.
It just seems so there's two. There's one called Waking Sleeping Beauty, and there's another one on Howard himself, just called Howard.
Okay.
And both of them are like really, really good. Yeah. But that would be my number 4. And then my number 5,
Ooh. Did he cut out?
Some classical realm. So I think maybe I would probably have to say, like, so some background before I got into design and stuff like that. I was like heavy into music. I played like violin and piano, and a lot of these instruments growing up. I was in like a jazz band. I played tenor saxophone, but I think violin is probably my favorite.
Barry.
I played tenor.
Hey, nice.
Love the fellow saxophonist.
I played trombone.
Okay.
And then I did percussion after.
Percussion. Okay. I did tenor sax, and I did jazz band for a long time. And I think while listening to that, you just get into so many of these like superb instrumentalists, from like Miles Davis to like all these guys. I think their influence is unmatched too, where it's like Nina Simone is another name that I'd throw out there, where it's just like also just hearing whenever an artist properly samples one of these guys and does like their due diligence and like a proper reverence, I love to see it. But if I had to throw a fifth out there, it would probably be Miles Davis.
Yeah, he's great.
That's a solid 5.
It's kind of like my top 5 basketball players. Like they have these convoluted explanations, but like, and they're from very disparate areas, but like it all ties together in the end.
But yeah, I mean that's how everyone is, right? In a way, it's like you have these certain pockets of your life where you kind of delve deep, and then that becomes one of your major influences, right?
Exactly. I mean, I think that's a great way to put it, because like you have these pockets of like, I'm going to nerd out about this specifically, right? Where it's like, we were talking about Kanye earlier. I think it's inescapable the years that he lived in Japan, when him and his mother moved out there, like his love of Akira, his like so much of what has influenced him. And, you don't get 808s and Heartbreak or, so many of these songs.
Yeah, I would say even you don't even get his Yeezy line. I would say his Yeezy line's very influenced by like Asian culture and Asian fashion.
I mean, just talking about, the interplay between a medium like film versus rap, like, Back to the Future, you get the Marty McFly, the Air Mags, like that has a direct influence on the design of the Red Octobers and, the Solar Platinums and that Yeezy 2 silhouette. Hell, the Yeezy 1 silhouette, like.
Yeah, facts.
And like, that's like, you see that coming back cyclically too, where it's like, when that Yeezy came out, you had all of the high top sneakers, like the Margielas. You had like, even the Kobe 9s they dropped back then with like the high tops. Yeah. With the 9 stitches for his Achilles on the back. Like that was definitely the high top era. Like 2000s is an interesting time to see that being brought back with the shoe. And then they did the whole re-release of the Air Mags too. Like I as a kid growing up, I never got those shoes. So to be able to work at a company like BR where we get to go to these events or see some of them in the office and unbox them, I think it's been insane.
That's crazy. That's crazy. It's like, I mean, I know we're both to some degree sneakerhead. I think if you're into basketball, I feel like you're into sneakers. I think it just goes hand in hand.
100%.
But I think,
I think the court, we see them do these human, like these like superhuman feats, right? Where it's like you see like MJ jumping from the free throw line on his dunks. Like now that's translating to these players entering, the tunnels pregame, and like they got all these fits, and like I think the world is just PJ expanding.
Tucker. Yeah,
dude,
like,
PJ Tucker.
PJ Tucker's garbage. Don't cap, but like
his sneaker game is unbelievable.
He's pretty good. He's pretty good.
I mean, see,
they're just playing him at the 5, man.
Yeah,
no
true. He's guarding Anthony Davis. Like, yeah.
eBay did a video recently where they said they showed his entire collection, and I wish they had gone more in depth. They just highlighted a few shoes, but if they had done the full collection, it probably would have been like a 4-hour long video.
Yeah, doesn't he have like 3,000 pairs or something?
Yeah, he has like a separate like storage like house just for sneakers.
That's crazy.
Insane.
It's next level, and he has like he doesn't just have like the crazy shoes that like, you know, are hype or
hype
like
beast. Yeah.
he has like player edition like Gary Payton's, you know, from like 2000 25 or like samples from like Kobe's year that he was a sneaker free agent. He was wearing Jordans. Like, you know, he can get his hands on those and then he'll go play with them on the court, which
that's
insane to me.
Nuts.
It's because he has so many. I don't think it matters. He's just like, screw it. I'll like, sweat these out, you know.
He's changed like shoes like multiple times in a single game, not just because like he was flexing, because they would literally fall apart because it was like a shoe from 1997.
It was like some Yeezys he was playing in, and they literally just broke, right?
He's broken he's broken Yeezys, he's broken Air Jordans, he's broken like old Vince Carter's like
stuff,
foam posits that literally started to crumble while he was on the court. Like that dude's sneaker collection is next level. But like
even Swaggy P, he wore 750s on court.
Oh yeah! Oh my god, that was a joke, dude. That was a joke,
bro. I thought he was gonna break his ankle that game. Like,
Swaggy P is amazing, man. He's like one of the ultimate characters from the NBA. Like the fact that he has so many of these moments off the field that we still like. I still remember him and JaVale doing the cinnamon challenge, like, and just the back and forth between him and Gilbert Arenas is hilarious.
Dude, oh my god, his first of all Gil's podcast, but then also the one where with Richard Jefferson and Shannon Fry. that podcast. Wow.
Dude.
Road Tripping. Yeah, that's what it's called.
Road Tripping. Yeah, the uninterrupted one. I mean, just Gilbert alone, his podcast is insane. He is one of those NBA players that I feel like keeps it 100 and just tells it like it is. And you know,
and also
makes for great content.
Yeah, his basketball mind is just insane.
Dude, 100%. I mean, this dude was crazy. Dropping 60 on Kobe. Like,
he's
no joke.
He can ball, man. He can ball.
Dude, Agent Zero in NBA 2K7 is like,
yo, facts. Yeah, I was thinking about that. I was like, even EA back in the day, EA wasn't terrible.
No, NBA Live. Those were like
NBA Live. Yeah, NBA Live 11, I think had him.
That was almost bigger than 2K back then, but.
I think it was. So I think probably in like 2011 when the MJ one dropped,
the
Jordan collection, that's when it really started to like diverge. Because I think that's the year that 2K had a game and NBA Elite was supposed to drop and it never came out or something like that.
I think something like that. Yeah.
There was like the Andrew Bynum Jesus glitch at half court. There was like a video that went viral and the game never survived. The demo came out, but the game never came out.
Right.
But prior to that, like NBA Live, I still remember I think it was NBA Live 2005 had a dunk contest mode, and you could like jump over motorcycles and like it wasn't like the Guitar Hero button mashing thing. I think it was like specific combinations that you had to press. And I used to play that mode for hours. I wouldn't even do like Sims or My Player or whatever the version 2005 version of that was. I would just keep playing the dunk contest. That was like one of my favorite games of all time.
True. You know, talking about Disney, this is a complete tangent. But I was thinking about this the other week. I was like, you know how they say they supposedly have Walt Disney frozen?
Yeah.
Like, I was thinking...
Cryogenic chamber.
Yeah. I was thinking, what if he came back to life? How long would it take before he got canceled?
Ooh. Like, that's a good one.
I'm saying like second tweet. Canceled off.
I mean,
there's so many videos that already expose him, I think, right?
100%. What do you even do? Like, do you give him access to Disney Twitter? Like,
wasn't he like a Nazi supporter or something like that?
I haven't done research into it, but like I've heard a lot of, rumors, I guess, or like stuff on the internet where you see on Reddit where people go down these wormholes.
Yeah, he's also like.
There's a lot.
When did he die? Like in the 60s, maybe 50s?
I think it was right prior to the completion of Disney World. I think it was 1960s or 70s.
Yeah, 60s. Like I think 1960s. So. It's like, he's literally from a different period in time. Like, I feel like if he would come back, just say something normal.
I know you. I know I mentioned I was watching like all these random movies. One of the ones that I watched while I was on my HBO Max kick, which I started watching it because they have Anthony Bourdain on there, All of Parts Unknown, which one of the greatest TV shows ever made.
I love Anthony Bourdain. Rest in peace, man.
Rest in peace. That's my guy. So there's an episode I think that they did in the final season after he passed away. There's almost I think recently, a few weeks ago, was the anniversary of that in August. And David Chang, the Momofuku restaurant group owner, he came out with a book, and he talked about Bourdain and his influence. And I loved how he put, he's more than like a character on the screen. He really like humanized culture and food in so many ways.
Mm-hmm.
And that shows, if I had to make like my top 5 shows of all time, like that would make the list, right? Honestly, like I feel like cooking and like everything he did with this TV show, right? Like he did an entire episode, I think it was in Miami, based off of like the way like Quentin Tarantino shot movies, right? Or like he did a entire episode in Hong Kong, inspired by the cinematographer that shot a lot of the Wong Kar-wai movies, Michael Doyle, and he shoots like the New York, the Queens episode with like all these guys that used to be in punk bands back in the 70s. And like it's shot like in the style of a 90s, like the way Clerks or like some of these old school movies that popped up back then, that they were shot. So I think he has a deep reverence for like, media history and films and stuff like that. And the show that he made was amazing. So while I was on that kick, the reason I'm going on this tangent is there's a new Seth Rogen movie about like pickle making. But
I've seen the ad of it on YouTube or something.
Yeah, so it was a terrible movie, but classic Seth Rogen, like stoner Pineapple Express. Just watch it, like don't think too much. But apparently, like this guy's ancestor comes to America. He falls in like the early 1900s, industrial age America. When all these factories are popping up, and there's like a pickle factory that's open, and he falls into a giant vat of pickle juice or something like that. And because it's hot,
Seth Rogen plot.
Yeah, he apparently he survives for 100 years in the brine of the pickles, and
oh god,
somehow he like comes back to life, and he meets his modern day like great grandson, and he's like a programmer working in Brooklyn, and Seth Rogen plays like a double role of like this guy from 1903 and himself as like this modern like hipster Brooklyn like developer dude. And it's actually like it has its moments, I'm not gonna lie, but like one of the plot lines in that is like he tries to get his ancestor like canceled, but instead he like goes viral and like becomes like a conservative like talk show like professor.
Interesting.
And it's an interesting subplot to the movie, but if Disney were to come back, I definitely think he'd get canceled pretty quickly.
For sure. But yeah, man, I think going to you now, like about where do I want to start with it? I guess like even where'd you get into like let me fuck around, make videos, whether it's like artist, basketball, whatever.
So I think it started out for me really with the NBA, just watching, I'm a huge Kobe fan.
True.
And I used to download like all of the YouTube clips that used to be, not just on YouTube, but like all these like forums back in the day. Like, Kobe had his own forums, the KB24 forums. And I used to literally go on those and like watch highlights like right after game and like, download them. And I had them on my computer and I never thought of making a video for a while, but then there was a campaign, and it's a specific ad campaign that I don't know if you guys remember, but I think it's one of the most iconic NBA ad campaigns that's like they've ever done. It was the old Where Amazing Happens campaign where they literally just had like the photos, they were like frozen moments and like the lights are flashing and they had like the piano playing in the background. Those commercials, and shout out to Wyden Kennedy, they're the agency that made those, did amazing work. And I think watching that really kind of inspired me and was like, oh, I could make something like this. I want to make something like this. So I started just messing around, and I was self-taught, just making this stuff on the side. And I started, with my buddy in Australia, Tyson Beck, art collective called posterizes.com. And it was basically for like NBA wallpapers and designs and it was a community of us artists that had seen each other making these videos and, you know, art pieces and all these different things on the internet. And we started this kind of collective and just started making. So this is pre a lot of these brands, teams, even being on like social or Facebook or Twitter or Instagram and stuff like that. So there was no like source to go to get like nowadays you go on the Texans like Instagram account, they have like Wallpaper Wednesdays and you can get like, you know, or, you know, the Cardinals will be doing a DeAndre Hopkins mixtape just themselves. Right. But like back then there was no central place for it. And so we kind of launched that collective and we're producing a bunch of content like that. And then just over time that expanded to include like, oh, you know, I heard this dope Travis like flip on SoundCloud, like we should make a video out of it. And like, I'll just hit up my boy and we'll be like, yo, let's collab on something and make something together. So it was just a process over time of like, let's make some dope shit and like teach ourselves how to do it, which I think is very much so like just this modern, like it's what all these kids are doing on SoundCloud. All these kids are doing with, you know, production. All these kids are doing with, you know, Lyrical Lemonade and all these folks just out there making music videos or like all these people in different arenas. So I think it was very similar. And, you know, all the things that I've done at BR and the things that I've done at, you know, Posterizers or Basketball Forever or any of the other places that I've, you know, even the collaborations or freelance stuff with these other brands, you know, it's just been like a common vision of like, oh, we want to make cool stuff. Who are people that are doing that right now? You know, we get a team together and we try to make it happen.
Yeah. So when you started, did you just kind of focus on like, oh, let's just make what like is cool to us and then worry about like income later? Or did 100%. You think like, okay, this would make us income? Like,
it was never something that had to, you know, had the, you know, even background, even an inkling, I think, of like, how are we going to profit off this? It was just something that was started as we all love this and we're doing it for free anyways on our own. So like bringing it together, I think just allowed us to like, you know, help each other and give like constructive criticism on pieces. And like, to me, it was no different than like what Kanye did with Good Music, right? Where it's like, you know, he every summer, right? Or, you know, every Friday that summer that they released Cruel Summer, you know, they were dropping the Good Fridays, like one song every week, like promoting like different artists. You know, I still remember the day the Mercy music video came out and I was freaking out. Like, yo, it's black and white. Like, you know, Cuddy's in it, like Sean's in it, like everyone's in it.
Everyone's in it, yeah.
Like, and that was like a distinct moment. Like nowadays, like when Drake drops a video, everybody's like dropping the GIFs and on Twitter of like, oh, like he started crying in the scene, or oh, yo, I can't believe Odell's in this. Like, but like back then, I think that was one of the first music videos for me that like had that type of effect. And like seeing, you know, him collaborating and just like, you know, there's that saying like it takes a village. Like I think to make Kanye what Kanye is, it took the influence of like Mike Dean and like all these other folks like that helped him, you know, Jay. And I think that similarly in what we were doing with this kind of like sports and design and like, you know, working with artists and stuff like that, it wasn't really as established of a thing. The same way that like 20 years ago, sports journalism wasn't as established of a thing, right? Like nowadays, kids growing up, they can be like, oh, I want to be like Stuart Scott. You know, when Stuart Scott was growing up, he had to be like, I want to be like Dan Rather, but a sports version. Like, you know what I mean? Like, so I think that shift of like having people in the industry that you can see that are doing this, like, you know, even just seeing all these other trailblazers like Tinker, what he's done at Nike, and the influence that he's had in terms of just the sneaker design world. There's like these pathways where it's like for anybody that's a creative that has a vision, you can kind of find ways to contribute to these industries, right? Where it's like, I know one of the most interesting episodes, The Last Dance, for me was the one where they're talking about him deciding between Adidas and Nike and, you know, what would eventually become Brand Jordan. And like, you never know what like those little decisions will be, right? Where it's like right now Puma's in the news for like signing Neymar to this giant deal. And like, they got LaMelo, they got like,
that's crazy,
Kyle Kuzma, they got J. Cole. Like that's a squad. Who knows, like in 5 years, 10 years, if somehow LaMelo shakes out to be just insanely good, like that's going to be looked at as an amazing move for Puma, right?
Yeah, also,
same with Zion. I'm not sure. I think
he does something.
He has,
I don't know. I can't remember what it was.
Yeah.
I believe he is he has some sort of stake in it. And I know obviously LaMelo recently signed with Rock Nation, which
even
again,
Lonzo, yeah.
Puma, all three of the brothers did. And so it makes a lot of sense. Like, oh, Puma, Rock Nation, Jay-Z, like it's all in the family. So of course they're going to sign LaMelo, but I think that it'll be interesting to see what that roster does, because like sometimes like when Kanye came to Adidas, complete game changer, right? Like I think same can be said of like Pharrell when he came to Adidas, right? And he dropped like the Human Race, like the Stan Smiths, all the design influence that he's had. Like you never know when you'll get like one artist that'll completely transform a brand. So like I'm excited to see what Puma does. I mean, even New Balance I think has some exciting stuff they're doing.
Dude, New Balance completely rebranded. That was crazy.
Dude, it was such a confluence of events too, where it's like you have Kawhi, you have Liverpool, like you know, and I think you had just the comeback of, I think in the past maybe decade, especially, you know, I think you got to give a shout out to Ronnie from Kith, all the silhouettes of the New Balances that he's brought back. And I think it's just become more of a popularized shoe. I know Salehi, who is a designer of chain reaction shoes at Versace. He came out with the collaboration with. He's coming out with the collaboration with New Balance right now. That was a 2 Chainz shoe, the chain reaction. He was the designer behind it, and prior to that, he worked at Yeezy, where he worked on the Yeezy 1. So it's so interesting to see like the DNA of all. Like New Balance now has the influence of, you know, Salehi, who worked at Versace, but also worked at Kanye with Adidas. So like his DNA is cultivating, you know, part of the rebirth of New Balance. So I think it's interesting to see like how that, you know, spreads and how, you know.
Also with New Balance, it was like the rise of the dad shoe.
100%.
Like dad shoe became a trend. It's like when you think dad shoe, it's like, oh, a New Balance. Like
I mean that and Air Monarchs. Those are the two that you like. But like there's a great TikTok that went viral on like sneaker TikTok where it was like a dad showing all of his different like mowing shoes and like yard work shoes, and it's all the same New Balance just with different like levels of stains on them. But like I think that New Balance as a brand, one person that a lot of people overlook in its successfulness, and I think is one of the, like when you talk about like Michael Jordan and Jordan Brand, right? Like you talk about Nike, you talk about Kyrie, LeBron, Kobe, like all these guys that were, like you talk about like Travis Scott now with his Jordan 1s and like the Air Maxes and the Air Forces that he dropped. But one of the names I think isn't associated with New Balance enough and was responsible for the rise of the brand, you got to give props to Steve Jobs. Like man had an outfit. He had his Issey Miyake turtleneck.
Classic.
His Wrangler jeans and his New Balance 997s. And so apparently there's a urban legend. We're not sure if it's true or not. It's contested, but apparently Steve Jobs wrote to New Balance. He wrote like a letter in 1987 requesting like specific features, and he was part of the reason that the 997 was like designed the way that it was designed. Like it's on Wikipedia, but I think like it's been like disputed because like the sources are like shady. Like, oh, this is like a web page from like, you know, how can we really confirm it's like some forum post or like, but apparently it might just be one of those things where it's like Einstein is attributed to every quote in the world. Like it's just like, you know, urban legend, but
dude, I think we found our title too. Steve Jobs calls New Balance ... We just found the title.
No, I mean, there's so much like mythology around Steve Jobs. I was watching one interview with Steve Wozniak. He was like,
shout out to Woz,
yeah, I love Wozniak, man. But besides that,
Wozniak, I don't think Wozniak gets enough love. He does an icon.
He's a mad genius. Like in one of my, I study computer engineering, so like in one of my classes, one of my professors like showed us like, so this is like the industry way to do it, like before like Wozniak did it, And then the way Wozniak did it, no one has ever done it. Like he made like one kind of transistor, which is like a type of circuit.
Mm-hmm.
He made a circuit in a way that like no one ever did before him. So like he completely just discovered a different way to do it, and that's how he put together that first like what was that called, Macintosh, right? The first Macintosh or whatever.
The first Apple computer. I think Apple One, exactly. Apple Two. Yeah.
Oh yeah, I think that came before Macintosh, right? Yeah. So.
Yeah.
Yeah. So like he basically he was beyond genius. But what he was saying is that like Steve Jobs wasn't this like, everyone thinks of him as like this supreme genius with amazing vision and whatever. He was saying that like Steve Jobs didn't just like come out of like his mother's womb like being this complete visionary. He had a lot of failures initially, and then the reason he got kicked out of Apple was because of his like vision failing. And then when he came back, he learned his lessons, he learned a lot, and then his vision like kind of turned into what Apple is today. So it's 100%. Like he was kind of doing that versus like everyone just thinks like, oh, he was a visionary from the start. That's how he thought about, oh, this is what I'm going to do with Apple and stuff like that. But yeah, no, but he's still amazing. So
well, I love that because I agree with Woz 100% in that sentiment where it's like it took the journey that Steve had to have with like getting let go of this company that he founded. That was his baby. Starting Next Computer, which was it's an interesting like side note in his history. You know, he had like Rand Paul design the logo for Next Computer, and like it was like I think it was $1 million for that logo, and people were freaking out about it. And like the actual PC had to be like a perfect cube design, and like it like down to the millimeter, stressing on the product design. And I think it's so interesting to hear those stories where it's like it took him obsessing about those details and people freaking out with him and like, you know, pushing back with his ideas for him to really become, you know, who we know him as, like, you know, the guy that came out with the iPhone. And like he, you know, all of these moments that happened to him, whether it was, you know, finding Lucasfilm, who were starting this little like lab called Pixar, and then I think they were making Listerine commercials at the time to like pay the bills. And like he's like, oh, let's make it like a short movie, and that would, you know, become Toy Story, and then, you know, everything else that's come after that, you know, circling back to Disney. I think what's interesting about Steve Jobs is he's made more money from Disney and Pixar than he ever did from Apple.
Wasn't he involved with Pixar initially?
So he he acquired it early on from Lucasfilm, the guys that made Star Wars. And Disney actually wanted to buy the computers to make an animated movie that they were doing. And it was basically, he's like, not only will we get the software, we'll also get like this little studio that can make, you know, movies and stuff like that. And then I think it was whenever it was acquired in 2007, Steve Jobs became the single largest Disney shareholder.
I read something like that.
That's great.
I'm like, it's just crazy to think about that, where it's like, we know him as a guy that founded Apple, but the majority of his fortune is from Disney and Pixar. Because he lost a lot of stock when he was fired, I think, that first time. He sold a lot of his stock. He could have kept it, but I think just out of spite.
Wasn't he like one of the first like big tech CEOs to be like, oh, I'm going to take that $1 a year salary or something like that?
I think so. I think he was. I think he was also just going back to the whole idea of like consistency, right? Like he wore the same outfit all the time. Like he was such a stickler on details for these different creative products and like the UI vision of Apple. And I think Jonathan Ive has a lot to do with that, but like just the way that the hardware, the way the hardware looks, the way that, you know, the software design looks and how simple it is from a human-centric design perspective. I'm a big proponent of that vision and just that like idea and how you can translate into social content and my world and a lot of the stuff that we do, where it's like, you know, it's easy to get caught up in the details, I think. And like sometimes like the simplicity of something is part of the beauty. I remember there was this one project that I worked on. It was, you know, 2016 when Kobe was retiring. And it was kind of this project where going through a bunch of footage, finding these moments in his career where, he's scored like 30,000 points or passed MJ in scoring, or he had like the basically it was based on like free throws that were during iconic moments. So his first points in the league, it was against the Knicks. They were on free throws. In 2006, when he scored 81 points, the 81st point was at the free throw line. When he passed Michael Jordan, 2014, I believe it was, on the scoring list, it was in Minnesota on the free throw line. You know, when he tore his Achilles against the Warriors, he had to go to the free throw line to hit those last two shots. And then his final game, 60th point, was at the free throw line. So tying that all together in one big like chronological video, with like, you know, debating in the process of that, like, should we go heavy on the effects or should we just keep it simple? Like, it's kind of that Steve Jobs mentality of just like keep it straight to the point. Like, it's emotional, you know, touches like a bunch of heartstrings. Like, and so we put it up, and it's one of the highest performing things back then. And, you know, we ran it back, obviously, you know, it feels like 4 years ago in January 26th.
Dude, that doesn't feel real, dude.
It doesn't feel real at all. Still. Yeah. But we ran that piece back, and we included in the last, I think, like 10 seconds of the video, after he scores his 60th point, it's then Gigi at Mamba Academy at the free throw line hitting 2 last free throws.
Bro. And you know, I saw that on your Instagram. Yeah, I saw that on your Instagram. Yeah. Like, bro. Yeah, man.
Oh, man.
Rest in peace, Kobe. Rest in peace, Gigi.
Rest in peace. Man.
Everybody else I was on the helicopter. Man, it doesn't feel real. I still like.
Yeah, no, still one of the craziest things.
Yeah, that's still. It seems just like that seems like fake news. Like.
Yeah. 100%.
It just goes back to, I think we discussed this when that happened. It's like you always look at your heroes and it's like, yo, your hero's never gonna go away. But when they do, it's like, what do you do at that point? But
yeah,
it's crazy. Yeah.
There's an interesting conversation that I was having with my cousin, and he's going to be coming back to the U.S. right now, but he just graduated from Oxford. So he's out in London, and I was playing Warzone with him, and while we were in the lobby, yeah, you know, that's been the wave this summer, right? Like,
that's how me and my cousins have connected, low key.
Dude, and Ike, man, like, and it works out perfectly because, like, I think right now, because everybody's at home, like, you know, you can play with somebody and it'll be like 4 a.m.
Everyone's sleep schedule is screwed up. Yeah,
exactly. No one has a natural circadian rhythm right now, so like everybody can wake up at like, you know, 10:30 and like probably get away with it. So like, I think that because of that, more Warzone has been happening. But we were talking about like whenever something like Kobe goes down, it's like a transitional, like it's a watershed moment where everybody kind of remembers like, oh, this is who I was when this news like happened. And like, I think, you know, that happens with Tupac, or that happened, I think, to a certain degree with Steve Jobs back in 2011. Like, it was this like mourning that the entire community went through. Like, you saw it with Nipsey, like Chadwick Boseman just like recently. And I think that it's interesting to me where you can almost mark your life by these different like milestones where it's like, who was I when this happened? And I think Kobe, for me, especially in the field that I'm in, he was such a massive influence. I think you talk about like everything that he did on the court, but also just like what he did, winning an Emmy, winning an Oscar, writing a book, starting a podcast. Like, he was in a rap album with Tyra Banks. Like, dude literally did a little bit of everything, right? He was like a modern day Da Vinci. Like, I don't think he got enough credit. Like, even in so with BR Kicks, sometimes we'll get a chance to interview some of these guys that worked at Nike. And like, recently there's a new Converse shoe that came out, the basketball shoe. The Converse BB. Kelly Oubre wears them, like, which they have an interesting squad of young, you know, players too. It'll be interesting to see. Like, I think Converse is leaning into that intersection of like lifestyle and sports. So like having a guy like Kelly, having a guy like SGA in OKC, like
right,
another fit god, like
because they D Wade was first signed to him, right? Before he left for Jordan Brand.
D Wade had some classic Converse sneakers.
Yeah.
He's been with Li Ning, he's been with Jordan, and he's been with Converse. But he had two of my favorite ads of all time. One where it's fall down 8, get up 9, where he's on the court, he's wearing the Converse. I think this was for the second one, but like he kept getting knocked down and like get up that 9th time. But then of course the classic where he's like, from Robbins, Illinois.
Yeah. When his son recreated it last game. Yeah, that was fire.
That was great.
Dude, that is one of the all-time like sneaker commercials. I think like you put that up with Mars Blackman, like you put that up with like even like the Big Baller Brand, that first commercial that came out for Lonzo's shoe, which I think makes it. But like the point I was making earlier about Kobe and him storytelling, the reason I bring up Nike was we had a chance to talk to Eric Avar, and he's the designer behind a lot of the Kobe shoes. And he helped design this Converse shoe. And so, you know, while we were talking to him and interviewing him about the Converse shoe, you know, slip in a few questions about Kobe because like, you know, he's
Kobe,
the guy behind it's Kobe, right? And like, I think this was back in like 2018 or early 2019 when the shoe came out. And it really, you know, he spoke to how involved Kobe was in the design process of the sneakers. And I think a lot of these players, you know, they'll get sent samples or they'll get sent like colorways and they'll give approval on like, oh yeah, I think this looks good. Or like, they won't necessarily be saying like how much of the weight how many ounces can we shave off if we went low top, right? They're not asking like if we lose the carbon fiber in the heel cup, you know, and by 2 millimeters, will that allow me to cut faster on the court? And like Kobe was asking those questions. And so like to see that level of detail and attention and to hear stories about that obsession translating to product design. Because that's like his battle suit, right? Like the shoes, if they give him a little bit of an edge.
It's his armor. You
know, like I remember reading about this stuff too. I was like, it's legit like you said, it's like literally 2 millimeters. How much can that improve our performance? Like it's like even like to go to a low cut. I remember, I think it was an interview like when he was talking about, when did he go low? Kobe 4s maybe?
So the Kobe 3 was the last high top, and that was the 2008 season. After that, he wore the Hyper Dunks, the ones that he jumped over the Aston Martin with for a little while. And then he had the low tops.
So legendary.
The Kobe 4s, yes. On there, he was talking about, he was like, I realized that the high top doesn't do shit. Like,
right. Well, he was inspired by all these soccer players that were on the pitch with such high torque, right? Like Messi and Ronaldo, like, and he was a big Barcelona fan. You know, I know he cites like Iniesta, right? Like he saw these players on the pitch, like being able to turn at high speeds, change direction, like, and the acceleration that you put on it in these low tops. And he's like, well, high tops are supposed to prevent ankles from rolling and like be protective. But if, you know, Messi can stop on a dime and like drop across, you know, and, you know, in split second, why can't a basketball player do it? So like to apply that thinking to a medium where everybody's like, you know, obsessed about high tops and like ankle protection and all these things, I think it was a game changer. Like, I think Kobe doesn't get enough credit for that side of things where like even, you know, later on you look at his shoes in terms of like what they did basketball wise, and you talk to like a lot of these players like Andre Iguodala swears by Kobe's, PJ Tucker, like when he has to like have a big game, he balls in Kobe's, right? He breaks out the Protros or like when he needs to be serious and he can't be like, oh, this might like break down in the middle of a game. Like DeMar, you know, he's a huge Kobe head. Like Devin Booker is out of his world. Shout out to Devin Booker. But like Jason Tatum, he has so many sneaker disciples, and it's beyond brand too, right? Where it's like James Harden broke out the Adidas Kobe's, right? Like Russell Westbrook, he's with Jordan brand, but like he has had Kobe inspired colorways made just for him, you know, like
even the Kyrie Kobe collab.
Exactly. Even the Kyrie's.
The Mamba mentality. You talk about like Bruce Lee, Kobe Bryant, to have a shoe with those two names, like if I'm Kyrie, I'd be stoked. Like I think that's interesting, right? Where it's like a lot of these players now, Kyrie with his line saw the way that Kobe used to deal with his, right? So he's like, instead of just being like, I'll see a sample or a colorway, like y'all have probably seen some of these Kyrie unboxings, right? Like the cereal pack came in a giant cereal box, like the SpongeBob pack, like the creativity with that, like he's really pushing it instead of like some of these other players. Like, I don't know if people know, like Kawhi just did a collab with Jolly Rancher.
Yeah.
Like it was cool. It was all right.
Like
but
the
like
sour sweet some shit.
Right.
Yeah.
And like it was decent. He wore them in the playoffs, and obviously the Clippers were such a joke on the court that nobody was talking about the shoes afterwards. Yeah. But shout out to Pandemic P
with his PlayStation ones. those
way
those
off.
are cool,
no, way off P, dude.
Way off P. Like even the PlayStation color.
I feel bad because Paul George basketball wise, they're decent. Like basketball wise, those shoes like play, but like and PlayStation collab, the idea is cool. Like Paul George, it's an interesting collab, but Kyrie is killing the collab game. Facts. I think that
Kyrie.
Even he had a Friends collab too, right?
He had a Friends collab, and I think that he's just he's done a lot of friends and family collabs too. Like he did one for Mother's Day, a colorway that's absolutely insane. The shoes that he's been doing for Sue Bird, like, and all the support with the WNBA, like he's been
those are fire,
just dropping fire. And I think like if I'm Giannis and I see that, like I'm like I would get like inspired. 100%. Like I gotta push the envelope, right? Like
100%.
The crazy part is that like it's still like so guard driven. Like the shoe market, the shoe game is so guard driven still. It's like not even LeBron. Even LeBron's like one of the biggest athletes in the world. His shoes are not selling as well as Kyrie's.
Yeah, because
that's why LaMelo is a signing, man. That's low key,
exactly.
like
huge. Yeah,
he's got the Instagram following. He's got the just
the clout.
Just the swag in general too, and on the court to back it up, right? Where it's like, people will buy a LaMelo Ball shoe, like
100%,
definitely, yeah.
Also,
people will buy a Zion shoe.
Yeah, because it's like most people are closer in resemblance to a guard rather than a LeBron.
Right.
Like,
I mean,
it's more relatable.
Like
dude, Steph Curry sells so many shoes. Like you walk into any elementary school, you will see like 50 Steph Currys.
So many.
Not just because of the price, not just because of the price point, but like no, these kids genuinely love Steph Curry.
Yeah, even like from everything from like arm sleeves to like, I remember him when he wore the headband. A lot of kids were wearing headbands because
the mouth guard. Like
mouth guard.
Now you see like every high school player with like mouth guards these days.
Just chewing on it. Yeah.
They're biting on them. Yeah.
Yeah.
Like I think it's interesting. Like Steph Curry this year, they gave him officially the Steph Curry logo. So the shoes that he's going to be dropping from here on forward won't have the Under Armour logo on them.
So they're just the SC, right?
Yeah.
They're just the SC. Yeah. I think the logo recently leaked or came out, but no, it's interesting where they're making that shift with him the same way that Jordan Brand did, and Li Ning did with Dwayne Wade.
Yeah,
like
D'Angelo Russell signed a Li Ning now too, right?
D'Angelo Russell is like the next generation. Which D'Lo is another player where like he's hit some big shots. Like he's exciting. Like
dude, just the ice in my veins,
dude. Actually, what's interesting is the ice in my veins is one of those celebration. So D'Lo is a player. His rise, I think, in the NBA coincides really well with Bleacher Report, like us in our prime, like social media time. When we really were like building the team and pumping out content every day and just like banger after banger of like these different edits and these different like really, I think, setting the industry standard for a lot of that stuff and like turnaround time and just like dropping them right after the game ended. D'Lo, that ice in the vein celebration is one of the first like big NBA moments where we turned around like a edit for that, where it's like the court. He this was like when he was on the Lakers. He hit a game winner and it was like freezing and like there's literally ice in his veins. So like that treatment, I still remember to this day doing a video for that. And after that, it was just like open like to. Like artistic impression, like whatever we did, like NBA Jam stuff. We did like weird, Super Saiyan, like Dragon Ball Z inspired stuff, like anime inspired stuff, and just like pushing the envelope. But like D'Lo, that moment I distinctly remember was one of the first ones where we were like, "Yo, let's run with this and like let's try and turn something around really quickly." So shout out to D'Lo. I'm interested to see how he does on the T-Wolves.
Bleacher Report in terms of like Game of Zones. That
Dude.
whole series.
Oh, I love that.
Is so
Dude,
fun.
I love that.
Shout out to the Malamut brothers. Adam and Craig. They are so when I joined Bleach Report, we started this thing called the Media Lab. And it was basically this little incubator within BR where we'd do these type of experiments. And the brothers, me, the brothers, our project manager, Will, and the head of the department, director of emerging media, Bennett, us five, and Bennett were basically the team that helped come up with the Game of Zones. And seeing those two brothers just write these episodes, and like we would brainstorm and be in the writer's room and like trying to figure out like Game of Thrones scenes that work with like NBA references, and like literally I think that there's a book of lore around like the history of Game of Zones and like how all these things tie together, and like why Larry Bird is, so and so in the series, and like how we're gonna tie it into separate episodes. It became like its whole own thing.
Dude, I feel like that's legit like watching Kendrick in the studio. It's like the equivalent to that is like, oh fuck. Like,
well,
dude,
because
it's
the
amazing.
moment when LeBron shaves his head. Yeah, that's goated, dude.
So there's so many episodes where like when we would be working on the scripts, like you'd see a moment and you would just know, like this is gonna be it. Like I still remember. So some of the highlights. One of my favorite episodes is when the Clippers broke into the locker room, and we did an entire episode around that. And Chris Paul led this crazy thing and against the Rockets, and it was just like part of the episode. Blake Griffin cuts off Harden's beard so that he can disguise himself. As Kendall Jenner. And
oh my God.
Reading that part in the script, just like you just die of laughter, because you can already imagine like what it's going to look like when the animators get it in their hands, and like and there's just so many great. When LeBron shaved his head with Kobe in the writers' room itself, we knew that would be one of like we wanted to make sure that it was the right tone.
Yeah, but that was so great. Oh my God, I probably died laughing.
Just that perfect balance of like meaningful, but also like low key hilarious, where it's like. Like the whole plot line of LeBron finally shaving his head and coming on home has been like a thing forever, and then to have that be like Kobe's way of passing the torch, just so subtle, and like it's fun to work on something like that, which is at the intersection of like all the drama that happens in the NBA, plus like Game of Thrones itself is such a show with so many characters and storylines, and we won't talk about the last season, but like prior to that, like I think that it was such a cultural, it had such a cultural impact. Like
100%.
There's Game of Zones scenes that are based entirely around these Game of Thrones moments, like the Drake episode with the Raptors choking. I think that episode, when we were writing that, like we knew that the reveal of like the fact that LeBron whooped their asses so badly in the playoffs that season literally made the episode do better engagement wise. Like, and it's like
the monster of the East, right? Something like that.
The feast of the East. And even I think it was the past season, not this season, but prior to the finale, we did the Kawhi trade episode.
Yeah, with DeMar DeRozan.
DeMar DeRozan. And that one's like actually emotional. Like that gets you like low-key, like you get like a little tear in your eye when like Kyle Lowry is like, no, it's my best friend. And like I think it's really interesting that there's literally like in the YouTube threads, or like there's separate Reddit threads where people will break down like, oh, did you see the little like boot that DeMar was wearing when he got thrown into the Raptor? It was technically a Kobe inspired like Game of Thrones like looking boot, and it's like we pay attention to all these details, and like one of my biggest,
it's like the little details. It's like the very small stuff that you catch. You're like, oh, that's genius.
I guarantee you could watch those shows like 20 times and you'll still be noticing stuff in the background. Like one of my favorite episodes is the Houston Rockets with Melo when they sign him. And there's all these details because you go into Mike D'Antoni, he has this like lab where he's like testing things out, and like on the backboard there's like player efficiency algorithms, and like in the background like I don't know if any of you guys have been to Houston. Like there's this donut shop called Shipley's Donuts, and so it's like there's a Shipley's donut box. There's like a Astro World like Travis Scott head in the back. Like all these little references throughout that are things that people won't catch just on a cursory viewing. Yeah. But like if you're watching it like a third time, like or you randomly like catch a little detail, or you like scroll down to the comments and see people talking about it. Those are the best moments for me.
Yeah.
Would you say that's like one of your best projects you've ever worked on?
100%. I think anybody that's had a chance to work on that show, from the writers to Adam and Craig to the animation team that we have on that. There's a head of animation, Christopher Wallinger. He's a genius. Like it really is, I think, a modern day version of what so many of these great animated shows from the past were. And like talking about Howard Ashman and his influence on Disney, like I think what's interesting about Game of Zones is it was very much so rooted in like proper storytelling. Yeah. So nothing was just straight up referential humor, right? Nothing was straight up just like, we have to do this because this is a huge storyline.
Yeah.
Like it had to make sense in the Game of Thrones canon, and it had to have like an exciting, deep enough like NBA moment to one thing that people always wanted us to do was to delve deeper into the whole D'Angelo Russell Swaggy P thing. But we just felt like it ended up being a note in the Kobe's retirement episode, where it's like, oh, he sends like inappropriate ravens. Ravens were like Twitter at the time, or like in Game of Zones world lore. But like we didn't make a full episode on it. And I think like that part of that was because you can't just chase any drama and like try to make a referential like
make it fit
piece of content and just try to like shoehorn it. I think it had to work on a lot of different levels. And I think people appreciated that, where it's like, I think towards the end it became its own thing where it had its own storyline, and it wasn't really just this one-to-one recreation of a Game of Thrones scene. But like I still think at its own merits, like the fact that people would make like reaction videos to the releases the same way, like when Kendrick or Drake drops an album, like I think that's kind of fun. Like seeing other people on YouTube watching Game of Zones episodes and like reacting to it, or doing like Easter egg breakdowns is pretty crazy.
Yeah. Like, dude, I bet it was fire to see it on TNT. Like, just see Shaq
100%.
Just watching it too. Like,
I mean, the beautiful thing about those guys is they just have such good chemistry, and like I think that TNT has done such a good job of having an environment where those guys can be themselves. Like,
exactly.
I think that when they reacted to it, like anytime that BR is owned by TNT, so like they'll do like BR Kicks promos, or like they'll share like content that we've made from time to time, and it's so awesome to see those guys react to it and talk to it, because like absolute legends in broadcasting, like all of them. Like shout out to Kenny for what he said recently, where he walked off the set when the players were protesting. That was a moment. Like I think like all the stuff that the back and forth between Shaq and Charles is amazing. Like,
oh, I love that. Yeah, watch it like every other day.
Ernie Johnson is an absolute legend. Like,
just controlling the mayhem. Like,
and they win like an Emmy for that show, like literally every year. Like, they're so consistently good. Like,
they deserve it.
But even going full circle back again to Kobe, bringing up the fact that these guys win an Emmy. We were talking about Kobe and the sneaker design stuff. This dude won an Emmy. Like, this dude won an Oscar. This dude won an Annie. Like, all these different storytelling mediums. And I think that's kind of insane, where it's like, you think like, oh, TNT, they won an Emmy. That makes sense. But like Kobe winning an Emmy,
that's crazy.
I just don't think like, I think in 10 years when LeBron has made 20 more movies and like documentaries, and like Uninterrupted and Spring Hill Entertainment are huge, and like Kyrie's probably like, he did the Breonna Taylor special recently. Like, I think that, all these players are getting into, producing their own content. Like
KD's doing his own stuff now.
KD just announced his own podcast today. The Etceteras, which is produced through the Boardroom and his deal, with Rich Kleiman and everything like that. But I think more and more you're going to see these players that are seeing media and storytelling as a viable avenue because of the trailblazing that Kobe did.
Yeah,
like
100%.
So,
and I'm sure they also see the influence that I think like LeBron's doing right now in the way that he also gets to put out his perspective on what's going on in not only like in social aspects, also what's going on in the NBA and like his own path. He can like explain it himself without, like some third party coming in and making a documentary. He can kind of control that narrative. Almost.
Dude, the shop is so good too. Like seeing the episodes where they get like, how many other are you going to get like Travis Scott for in the same room? Right.
Yeah.
And like, it's just good content to me. And I think like getting those tidbits of knowledge, like I know one of my favorite recent episodes was the shop that they did during the Super Bowl, I believe, right after the Super Bowl when they had Patrick Mahomes on there.
Yeah.
And they had like Chadwick Boseman on there. And
that was amazing.
Just seeing all these people sit together and chop it up and talk about like going back to the Travis Pharrell episode.
Yeah.
Pharrell talking about
his skincare,
exfoliation. And it's like, when are you going to hear that? Like, this is you're not going to hear that on like an Ahmad. Shout out to Ahmad Rashad, but like you're not going to hear that in inside the NBA interview. Like, but LeBron being there and brokering that conversation and that being a piece of content that exists out there. Like, I love that. So like, I'm excited to see what the next decade holds for like.
I also think it's so huge. It's like uncensored.
100%.
A lot of times when you go somewhere, you're like, oh wait, I should probably like make sure I'm not swearing. I don't say anything I don't mean, or like say something that's like that could be taken the wrong way.
Dude, imagine being LaMelo. Like every spotlight is on him. Like when he's walking through his school, he's got
Bronny. Just Bronny fucking smoking the Nuggets pack.
Oh god, dude! Shout out to Bronny.
All those memes. He's dead, dude. He's dead.
Bro, if they were like LeBron, they'll bring the belt home or something like crazy. Twitter was funny.
That's the environment that these kids are growing up in, where it's like constantly under like the spotlight.
He was trending. Like, dude, imagine if you were to just smoke weed, and then like legit in an hour, you're trending on Twitter. Like that doesn't happen to anyone.
He got screwed over.
Normal experience.
Whoever took that photo screwed him over, man.
No, he recorded himself.
Oh, was it himself?
Who's fucking that Nuggets back today? Like, because like I mean, at the end of the day, he's 16. Like the dumb shit that we did at 16, this dumb shit we do like past weekend. Like, but we're not Bronny. That's the only difference.
100%. Well, that's the crazy thing. Like nowadays, right? Where it's like we have no idea of all the crazy shit that like all these players may have gotten into that we never heard about, but it's like because LaMelo or Bronny lives in an era where all this stuff is public and they're public figures, and like something like that can be on Instagram. Like even seeing like I think Cool Kicks has their YouTube channel where they do people that come in the store, and Bronny recently went in with his boys and like he's done the shout out to him. They have a great operation there. They just opened up the card store as well. But I think that seeing, Bronny at school, people pull out their phones, right? Like seeing Bronny, like even just chilling at the mall with his friends, like he's always going to be in that public eye. And I think that the generation of players that we have coming up now dealing with that are in a completely new ballgame. Because I think even Michael Wilbon, he would talk about how like a lot of people don't realize, like, and I think seeing The Last Dance, they kind of saw that side of Jordan where he's kind of just like a dick to people, like, which was part of his personality. But like the press protected MJ to a very large degree. And nowadays, like nobody's going to protect Bronny if that Snapchat or Instagram comes out.
You're also expecting Bronny to be a lot more mature.
I mean, he's got one of the most like media trained fathers.
He's been media
trained. That's such a great example.
Yeah, facts.
Like
facts. Yeah, but I mean, like, I was just thinking from like his perspective. He's probably like, my parents are home. I'm like, someone's looking after me who I really don't give a fuck about. I'm a while out. Just see how far I can get before shit goes haywire.
Well, I think it's interesting because Kanye, when he wrote My Beautiful Dark Twisted Fantasy, a big part of it, I think even more so, you saw this in 808s and Heartbreak, right? Where it was like his mother had just died. And part of it was the plastic surgery and like this whole like image of what you're supposed to be and look like when you're in LA and the mom of a rapper, and like his breakup with Alexis Pfeiffer, and just like all that stuff happening very publicly in the spotlight. Like he doesn't fly to Hawaii and just like, you know, go into the lab with Chris Rock and all these other people and make that music without like just this
first.
Yeah, I mean, while the Taylor Swift stuff, but like also just like the weird isolationism of being in the public eye and being a celebrity, like because of this like volatile social climate. Does Bronny have a few years where he's just, you know, I mean, look, LeBron back in like 07, 08, 09, like there's stories about his entourage, Mav Carter, and like, you know, them going out and, you know, having a great time that, you know, have kind of been scrubbed from the internet. Like there's an Arash Markazi piece from 2009 where he talks about like LeBron and Odom hanging out in Vegas. And that story's not on ESPN.com anymore. Like it's been removed from the website. But like, I think that it's like, he didn't live in as much of the public spotlight even then. And that was LeBron who, you know, people were following from high school, like
from,
you know,
15 years old. Yeah.
Right.
Legit. Even though
I still remember that Chosen One tattoo, like being a huge deal when he first got it. Like when he got the Hummer.
Yeah, facts.
Yeah,
facts.
that was such a. I remember that. That was such a big controversy. Oh my god!
Because they were like, "How's he affording a Hummer?" All this, but
and I mean, LaMelo's got a Lambo.
Yeah. Jello has a Ferrari. He hasn't played a second in the NBA. Like
they're making a lot of money from that Facebook show, Ball in the Family.
Yeah,
like that Facebook watch check hits different.
100%, 100%. Even Chris Bosh recently on JJ Redick's podcast, he was like, when the whole like when they rented out the stage and everything, LeBron was like, "Oh, we're not 1, not 2, not 3, not 4."
Right.
He was thinking, they were like, "Dude, we're 20-some years old in Miami.
Right.
Like, what do you expect? Like, we're in the South Beach, like prime of our careers. Never thought we would be teaming up together. Now we're just like kicking it in Miami.
That's just fun,
like,
man. That's just fun.
You're gonna.
I always say that was LeBron's college. That was his years to like go and grow up and like have fun, play with other talented people. Because like we're talking about Steve Jobs earlier, right? Like, and one of my favorite things about Woz is he talks about how important it was for Steve Jobs to go to college, and like he dropped out. But then, as Steve Jobs put it, he dropped in on these calligraphy classes randomly.
Yeah.
And in his Stanford commencement speech, he talks about if he hadn't been like wilding out and just been like, I'm going to drop out and there's a cute girl in this calligraphy class, I'm going to go take, like literally just audit it. The Macintosh, the first one that came out, wouldn't have all these different fonts. And wouldn't have all these like different options for word processing. What a lot of people don't realize with Apple is that back in the mid 80s, it was the single biggest desktop publishing brand in the world. Because, you know, if you wanted to make a magazine, if you wanted to make a book, any publishing type of thing, you would, that's where the Mac kind of got its reputation as like the machine for creatives. And they sold more printers and more ink and more like desktop publishing stuff than any other place. And you think about the influence that Steve Jobs had with picking like the typefaces that would go on that original Macintosh. Like, I think that, you know, the fact that he references that where it's like, because I dropped out of college and randomly attended this course, we had customizable fonts earlier than we would have had otherwise. Like, that's a crazy little connect the dot that, you know, you never would think about, but it had an influence. And I think that's amazing to like, just, you know, look at.
It's crazy. Yeah, definitely. Oh yeah. I just wanted to ask you one thing is, I don't think we touched on it yet. Like, how'd you get to BR and like kind of what was your journey there?
True.
Damn, interesting. So it's prior to joining BR, like I said, I had started that posterises.com. And it was like this artist collective, this magazine, this website. And I think at the time, he was a director of emerging media. Bennett, who I mentioned, started the Media Lab. He saw a bunch of the designs that I'd been doing. And I kind of distinctly remember it was in the 2011 playoffs. So it was right after the Mavs had beat the the heat.
Yeah.
And one of the things that I was doing at that point was, like I said, teams weren't really on social, and like BR didn't have an Instagram presence at that time. Like Instagram was relatively new. And I had started my own kind of Instagram channel where I was, at the time, I think I had like around 100,000 followers on it. And it was just NBA design content, wallpapers and artwork and stuff like that. And Bennett had noticed that piece of work. And I was literally, so I studied, what every good LeBron kid does. I was doing pre-med. I was
nice.
majoring in psychology, and I was sitting in my organic chemistry class, and it was the end of the semester. And I think we were just watching like a movie or something. And so I was like sitting in the back of the classroom, and I had a website with like all my work. It had my phone number. And Bennett came across it, and he called me during my organic chemistry class. And at first I was like, oh, San Francisco, like I'm not going to pick this up.
Yeah.
He calls again 10 minutes later. And at the time I was a junior in college, and literally I'm like, class had just ended. So I'm like, all right, I'll pick up the phone. And on the spot, he offered me a job to come join PR. And I was like, well, I might as well, I take the summer off and go check it out. And my other option was shadowing a cardiologist down in Houston, which is fun. Don't get me wrong. But I decided to go to San Francisco, and, BR was very young. It was very startup-y. It was a company that had just been acquired by Turner. So we were kind of in that transitional phase, I think, where back in the day, it was much more of, in the sense of, Huffington Post or BuzzFeed, where they're trying to get SEO and clicks, and they had all these slideshows and stuff like that. And transitioning from that to a more, like, when BR brought on Howard Beck from the New York Times, that was like a big thing reputation wise that like changed, the content they were making. And so I was kind of brought in as a part of that initiative where it's like, we just want to make cool experiments and differentiated content. So Game of Zones is that type of thing. Like I had a chance to work on, everything from art galleries for like Kobe and David Beckham, and like, working on all these different animations that we've done, where helping watch Gridiron Heights and, Champions and Game of Zones and all these other like little series that we've done over time, Sports Gods, and like we did a Kobe Bryant musical. We did it was a parody of Frozen. We did one for Warriors Super Team. And then on top of that, I basically helped, launch the social side of things. So we had an entire social team over there that I helped build out. And, we keep referencing Steve Jobs, but I think his philosophy of like, when you build a bunch of A team like members that are just like really, really good at what they do, you're able to produce great content. So, we, in the process of building out that team, right? Like it wasn't just like, let's just go find somebody that has a really great, resume. Let's go check out their presence on Reddit. Like let's check out, their Twitter voice. Let's find people on YouTube creating their own content on their own, and like bringing together a team like that could do a little bit of everything. That's basically what I've done while I was there, because that's what I've done on my own, right? I helped build this art collective. It was kind of bringing a bunch of people together. So like same way that like I think you see J. Cole, everything that he's done with, Earth Gang and JID and all those listening sessions were crazy, that they did. Like I think that Revenge of the Dreamers, every collaboration's been great. We talked about Cruel Summer earlier, like building a group of people that can make that kind of stuff and as a collective elevate everything. Like I think that's a big part of what I do. So that's kind of how I joined BR and what my responsibility there has been, like innovating, trying to push the envelope as far as like, right now, a lot of the stuff we're working on or have worked on is interactive stuff, augmented reality. How can we take things like machine learning and apply it to, social content? How can we take, these different ideas that we have and find ways to bring them into the user space and have people interact with that in a meaningful way, and just figuring out these different platforms, because I think all of them are so unique.
Yeah.
Awesome. Yeah.
That's sick.
That's crazy.
I want to see some machine learning.
I mean, that's a crazy thing. I think a lot of people, having experience in the social world, like all of these platforms are so distinct, right? Like TikTok versus Snapchat versus Instagram versus Facebook versus Twitter. Not only do each of them have their own target demographic of people that are going there, but like when you open these different apps, the user interaction design is very different, right? So when you open up Snapchat, it opens up to a camera screen. Mm-hmm. And it's asking you to create, right? It's a messaging app where it's like you have to make something and post it, or like, so they're immediately telling you from the jump, like, this is what we want you to do. And like, it's a not very subtle cue of like, you know, take a photo or take a video and like share it.
Yeah.
I think on Instagram, Twitter, Facebook, they're feed based, right? So like you're going through all this.
It's more consumption based.
Right. You're consuming and like you have all these other people. But I think what's brilliant about TikTok, before we get into TikTok, you know, I think YouTube, it's kind of more like a search engine. You know, you get your subscribed videos up front, but like generally you're typing in like, oh, I wanted to watch the, you know, Patrick Mahomes highlights from Monday night or something like that. So you use the search bar, right? And it's like,
recommended.
I think people don't give enough credit to that recommended page, but like the For You page on TikTok, it would be like Instagram opening up to the Explore page, right? Where it's like some people you follow, but like a lot of stuff that it's literally picked out for you. And I think that as a content creator, it's really interesting. The analogy that I would use for TikTok that is different than any other platform is almost an economic like metaphor, where TikTok has a very, very rich middle class. And what I say when I describe it that way is that kind of the social media version of the American dream is alive and personified by TikTok, where like anybody can go viral, and like anybody can have that one TikTok that'll get like 100,000 views or like a ton of likes, and like people will find it because it, you know, pleases the algorithm. And like just the fact that that could happen, it's almost like a heroin addiction. Where it's like you're searching for that. Like
it's crazy. I mean, like I also like have been creating on TikTok recently, like posting daily, and it's like it's almost like the power of it, and it almost gets you. It gets everyone excited to actually just create and just see what happens.
Dude,
you know, like
think about how hard it is to break through on YouTube. It's such a saturated place, and like
it's impossible. Yeah,
so much video is uploaded regularly. Like it's so hard to get a foothold when you have like Mr. Beast out here who makes amazing content.
Exactly.
But like he's gonna everybody's gonna go look at his videos, and if you happen to be a recommended video, like you might get a ton of love. But like I think what's interesting is on YouTube, because the content is longer, you might sit and watch YouTube, and at 10 minutes of video or 15 minutes of video, like 7 minutes of video, and in the course of an hour, you'll watch maybe 5 or 6. But like, I'll sit down and like, I'll look at my phone 20 minutes later and I'll be like, oh shit, I've been on TikTok this whole time. And I've watched like 120 videos.
Yeah. Exactly. Yeah. The speed of it is amazing.
Right.
Also, I would say like the major difference from any other platform is Instagram, Facebook, YouTube. The idea is that, oh, we're going to show you stuff we just think you like. And what ends up happening is that it'll just become a circle. So it's like very cyclical in what you see on YouTube, Instagram, Facebook, whatever.
Also, what's huge with that is that like, even if you find something that you don't like, you're like, oh, I'm going to like the next one. So let me just keep going. Let me just keep going until I find something I like. And you're like, oh, this one was funny. I'm sure the next one's going to be funny. And you keep having that like, just like scratching that itch almost.
What's that like dopamine hit that you get? And I think that
exactly
you kind of get it from an infinite feed on Instagram, but like I think the beauty of TikTok, right, is the fact that it's, I mean, this comes down to how valuable user data is, but they're tracking everything from like time on page, what button you're pressing, like you know, like literally all these little metrics that form such a good psychographic profile on any user, where it's like, I think it's uncanny how good these prediction algorithms are. And I think
crazy.
the other aspect of TikTok that really intrigues me is the low barrier to entry, right?
Mhm.
Where it's like, I think on YouTube, you kind of saw this where people make reaction videos and stuff like that. On Instagram, people will sometimes share stuff to their story, but they're not really remixing content, right? I
Mhm.
think what TikTok has done right is that it's put an impetus behind adding to the trend, right?
Right.
Where it's like, even if you're just doing the same dance that Charlie D'Amelio did, like,
Yeah.
but you're a cowboy from Wyoming
Yeah.
and
Mhm.
people happen to love that, like,
Facts.
3 months
It's-
later, you might be living in LA at the Cloud House or something. Like, you know what I mean? Like,
exactly.
you never
Yeah.
know.
Yeah.
Exactly.
And I think keeping that dream alive is what um,
Mhm.
TikTok, has done by having that healthy middle class where it's like
Mhm.
anybody feels like they can be Charlie. Anybody feels like they can be the next, like, whoever's gotten big there because, like, the barrier to entry is so low and there's a chance that anybody could go viral with whatever they're doing.
Exactly.
But I think weirdly enough, Gen Z, for the large part, is also far more accepting of just like people doing their own thing and making,
Facts.
Yeah.
their own type of content. Like
Right.
you find like a pocket of people that mess with it.
I remember that like even 10 years ago, being a YouTuber was like such a strange thing. You'd be like, oh, I'm a YouTuber. And then people would look at you sideways. Nowadays, it's like, even if you say you're a TikToker, people
Right.
honestly don't care. They're like, oh, cool. Like, what kind of videos do you make? Let me follow you. Like, like they're more open to like this space before like this space was like, oh, like, why are you doing that? Like, that's kind of weird. It was
Right.
kind of that shift in like the past 10 years, I would say.
I think aspirationally becoming a creator became one of the most desirable like jobs, right? Where it's like, I think even the viability now of being a YouTuber, like a lot of kids, you ask them what they want to be, like a ton of them will say, oh, I want to be in the NBA still. Like they'll still say like, oh, I want to be a movie star. But how many of them say I want to, be a YouTuber, or I want to be like a TikTok star or whatever? Like, I think it's very mainstream. And I think that the ability for everybody to like just shoot stuff on their phone or like, start making videos. Like, I was inspired by an NBA ad campaign, right? And like, I had a shitty HP like laptop with Windows Movie Maker.
Facts.
And like, I feel like hearing the fact that all these folks that are so good at what they do has started, even going back to Jay Dilla, right? Like he was making loops with like, I think there's a story about him where he couldn't find a second drumstick. So he used like a chopstick where he wrapped the end in toilet paper. And like everybody was asking him like, well, why'd you do that? And he's like, well, I didn't have anything else. But then you literally had other producers like using like a mallet or like a chopstick wrapped in toilet paper to like muffle the sound to recreate the like authenticity of the way that it sounded. So it's like, I think it's interesting. Like it becomes a part of the charm almost, where it's like part of the reason we love Through the Wire is because the story that Kanye literally rapped with his jaw shut. Like,
it's so raw. It's like real. Yeah.
It makes it's so Kanye too, where it's like, of course he's gonna rap through the wires. Like he's so dead set on becoming a rapper. Like, he's already told Jay and every other person at Rockefeller, like, yo, I can rap. Like now that he's gonna get the chance, he's gonna do it come hell or high water.
Yeah, exactly. So even when Big Sean, this just came out, it's like Kanye just randomly just happened to be at that radio station.
Right.
And he's like, let me just freestyle while you're walking out. And then just like that, like just the I guess the need to do it.
Right. Well, it's like you have to be like confident enough in your own skills to do it. But like, what's that Michael Scott, Wayne Gretzky quote? You miss 100% of the shots you don't take. Like,
exactly.
You have to shoot your shot, especially when you're there. Like,
facts.
And it's like, if I saw Kanye walking down the street, like I'm gonna go talk to him. Like,
it's like how many people? Yeah, I'm sure. Also, it's like how many people just go up to Kanye and are like, "Hey, listen to my music."
Right.
And how many of them like actually are confident enough to be like, "Hey, actually listen, like give me a shot."
How many people have put in the work so that when they're in that position, like.
Exactly.
A lot of people are already thinking about what I'm going to do when I get there. 100%. Like you have to be so focused on the work.
Put in the work.
Right.
That's why there's that classic saying like success is opportunity meeting like your hard work. Like the collision of that, your preparation. If you're not prepared, doesn't matter if that opportunity comes through, you're not going to get it. You know what I'm saying?
I mean, I think that's what TikTok is hammering home too, right? Where it's like the algorithm almost rewards people for posting consistently, posting daily. And it might not necessarily be every day that you're going to get that one that gets like to the For You page and just gets crazy numbers, but like eventually it will happen. And like, I think it's that opportunity of like, I'm consistently producing content that resonates with my audience. And then there happens to be a trend that goes crazy, or there's like some hashtag or just some topic that you hit where it gets amplified, and you've already done the work and the research and like I don't know. I think there's like a beauty to that where it's like, it's not just servicing kind of like Reddit, right? The wisdom of the crowd. Where it's like the best content will float to the top. The best comments are usually like pretty witty, and like obviously you get the same old every once in a while, but like that's one of the places where we found a lot of the creatives that work at BR now is through Reddit. Like because they were in the comments making photoshops, or like because like they went viral on high quality GIFs. Like so many of the talented creators that we have that we found that make like these crazy head swaps or these edits is because we were already on these platforms creating that content. We saw other people doing it. We were like, hey, want to come move to New York and make sports memes like as a job. I still think it's kind of surreal that this industry exists. Like I said earlier, sports journalism wasn't as big a thing 20, 30, 40 years ago. And then you had like, all these people that set the stage, and like even nowadays, right, seeing like Rachel Nichols, her interview with Jimmy Butler a few years ago, like everybody was talking about it. Like, and I think that you have kind of a similar moment happening in like the content creation space where I mentioned like Lyrical Lemonade, right? Like I think Cole and everything that they're doing, setting a stage for creators is really interesting. And I think that you're seeing that more and more in all these different fields where like, sports design, I think similarly, or even just content creation, you're seeing people that are changing the game, and like whether it's album artwork or like, interactive stuff, like even, seeing J-Lo and Maluma doing their TikTok campaign. Like I know that's like the record companies, but like it's kind of insane the level of interactivity and the opportunities that there are for creators now to like get into the game somehow.
Yeah. Also, it's like going back to Kanye, when Kanye's right now he's ranting about like owning your own masters, owning your own everything. When you're making your own content, you don't have a boss. Like you're creating what you want, and you're getting paid for what you make, or like lack thereof, or it's like you're just having fun. At the end of the day, you're just having fun. Like I don't think anyone creates for the check. I think people create to.
Well, there are a lot of people who do that actually, but
I think the people who last.
It's the people who exactly, the people who are like genuine to the craft, and I would say like make it the biggest are the people who are dedicated.
I think part of that reason is if you're doing it for the love of the game, quote unquote, right? Like you'll be willing to do it when like it starts to get boring, right? You have to be really passionate. You get told no so many times, like 100%. Keep going. Like I think there's such a high degree of failure. Like we were talking about Steve Jobs, right? Early on in his career, like, Kanye has had his fair share of like just, lowest of lows. Like, 100%. I think the same can be said of so many other like artists or creators where it's like, you have to go through the gauntlet of like so many of these things and be willing to like reinvent yourself, right? Like even Kid Cudi, like I think now looking at something like Satellite Flight or Wizard, you have a little bit more reverence for it because you wouldn't get Kids See Ghost without those albums. Like he had to explore indie cut and that punk rock, like Nirvana inspired Kurt Cobain. Like
I wasn't so sure where that was going, but it came out. It ended up being a good result in that.
Yeah,
so.
like you go through it, you somehow make it. You're like, okay.
And it's not necessarily about that singular album, but like My Beautiful Dark Twisted Fantasy is a culmination of everything that came before it.
Yeah.
Right. And theoretically, everything that came after it. Right. Is like
exactly.
Yeezus is a deconstruction of so much of the opulence and like grandiose nature of My Beautiful Dark Twisted Fantasy, and it's like this minimalist, reconstructed like piece of art where he's talking about race relations and like fame and all these things. And like I think that seeing that evolution as an artist, you have to be willing to say like, well, people might not like this next album, and like if you're just doing it for the check, you're going to run back the same formula again and again and again
100%.
until you have to change it. And so like I give credit to a lot of these people that are willing to reinvent themselves, and like even shout out to Drake, like
100%.
I think it was the 7-year anniversary of Nothing Was the Same, or something like that the other day. And like you don't get Just Hold On, We're Going Home without like 808s and Heartbreak and Kid Cudi rapping about
exactly.
Like I like Pars, for example. Pars is stupid ass. He bitches about like how Drake has like all these like different versions. I guess you got Jamaican Drake, you got this Drake, you got Canadian Drake, you got Hood Drake, but it's like the evolution of it is what makes his music so fresh. It's like
and it's constantly adding new sounds into the repertoire.
Like you can have a song with Lil Durk on it, but then you could also have a song with like a Chris Brown or like some random ass pop star. I think you have Justin Bieber filming your music video. Like you could have, if you're Drake, you have that range, which is ridiculous.
I mean, it's a double-edged sword, right? Because on one hand, you don't want to seem like a culture vulture, like appropriating the sound, but like at the same time, it's like giving reverence and spotlight to something isn't necessarily like, because it's like on one hand, people will clown Drake for, the influence of like, you look at One Dance or Controlla or even Passion Fruit, right? And like you can see so much of the influence from other artists in those songs. But you could say the same of like how much of a debt does Kanye owe to Daft Punk, right?
Exactly.
How much, I think that there's these parallels that have happened all the time. Like even the Beatles, right? Where it's like when they made their whole switch to more psychedelic, like Yellow Submarine and I Am the Walrus and like, Sgt. Pepper's Lonely Hearts Club Band, like they were super popular, but they were like, people don't know, like not all of our audience has to stick with us if we decide to drop this album. And I think that it's kind of commendable as an artist if you're willing to put that on the line, just to be like, this is my vision, take it or leave it.
Like we were talking about Travis last episode with like the Cactus Jack sent me
the McDonald's collab.
But like even like before that, I'm sure you've watched the documentary, but it was like he was kicked out of his own home. He was like, fuck it, let me go to LA. Right. Crash at someone's couch. And then you see him in the studio with Jay-Z and Beyonce. You see him working with Kanye. 100%. And then now it's like he's on Fortnite. He's on McDonald's. He has Jordan
next level.
Shoes. Like, he just posted something on IG. He was like, he's playing on the PS5 already. I don't know if you saw that. But
I didn't see that.
He has like beautiful. The PS5 controller. He's like, I'm gonna be playing this all night. Like, dude, how does this guy already have a PS5? Like,
dude, influencer seeding is a real thing, man.
Oh, 100%.
It's a better way to sell product, to move product in 2020 than general sponsorship.
It's the best way now.
Like, I agree. Yeah. I mean, going back to TikTok, like Dunkin' Donuts has made so much money already from the Charlie. Like,
100%. Yeah. It's actually it goes like even deeper. Like if you see like Charlie's audience, it's in like the lower teens, mid-teens, right?
Right.
That audience, I watched like a video analysis on this. They're like, if they get those teens hooked onto Dunkin' Donuts coffee, they're customers for life instead of being like on Starbucks or something like that. So it's like such a genius move.
Yeah.
Scott Galloway, who's a professor at NYU, he has a podcast on Recode with Kara Swisher. She did a lot of like the D3 conferences where she interviewed like Bill Gates and Steve Jobs, and she's been in the tech world for a while. And they were talking about the TikTok acquisition, Oracle versus Microsoft and stuff like that. And one of the most interesting names I think that in the acquisition doesn't get talked about enough is Walmart, because Walmart is in talks to try and acquire TikTok. And I think it's much smarter than it first seems, because like if you have a direct buy-through link from social where you're able, like Emma Chamberlain sells her own coffee and it's available in Target, right? Like,
yeah,
Mr. Beats merch is doing numbers in a pandemic, right? Like,
yeah.
And
he
like,
just had a video where he's selling like 2 million shirts or something, like some crazy amount of shirts.
Yeah, like he had to like autograph all of them, and like,
yeah,
dude, those shirts aren't cheap. They're like $40 each.
it's
like
crazy. Yeah,
nuts.
And when you do the math, you're like, dude, this guy's actually raking it in right now. Like, and I think that when you see somebody like a Walmart say that they're interested in a platform like TikTok, you start to wonder, like, what are some of the TikToks that I've gotten on my For You page where it's like, I now see a bunch of stuff where it's like, I mentioned like the just AI TikTok and like machine learning and all that stuff and augmented reality. I see so many creators that do that type of stuff. And it's so good at knowing exactly what it wants to show me. But like, if there were products that made that easier and I could like easily buy them one click away, I would probably be far more likely to purchase than any other platform.
I think TikTok is actually working right now. They just bought some brand to do in-app like purchases of merchandise. Yeah, so
it's going to be a game changer.
Yeah, I think Instagram is trying to do something very similar as well.
Yeah, because Instagram already has where you could tap.
They already have like the shops.
Like based on
they have like the shop thing. But
yeah.
TikTok already has that. It's gonna be a complete game changer once they can sell merch directly through the app. Like it's over at that point.
Yeah, because like even if you think about Amazon affiliate links on YouTube, like just like I'm like obviously the creator makes some amount of money. But the amount of money that Amazon directly makes if you buy something using that link, it's like...
Yeah. Like, I mean, well, the beauty of Amazon, I think, is also just the fact that anyone can access it. But Jeff Bezos has this quote where he talks about owning the store versus owning the street that the store is on. Yeah. And he literally owns the street that every store is on, right? Like, you go there for everything. And like, I think when you look at TikTok, if they can become the street that the store is on, the social content where all like you watching, like even when you go into the comments, like, oh, I'm so glad that I'm on cooking TikTok, or I'm so glad I'm on anime TikTok. And it's like when you start getting like a bunch of videos of like people doing recipes, like if they can sell you a knife set right there, or like exactly. And I think that what we were talking about earlier, where it's like these influencers are almost better at selling product now, moving product, than like celebrities in a lot of ways, where it's like there's far more like of a craze around Kylie Jenner's lip kits than there is of like the new Roger Federer Uniqlo collection. Right?
Yeah, exactly.
Like, and that's partially due to the hype of the individuals themselves. But like, I still think that for traditional brands that are still trying to do it the way of like, let's just throw you on a bunch of billboards and like make a single commercial. It's nowhere near as cool or as interactive, or like Travis going all in and selling the chicken nugget pillow. And look, keep in mind, there's like two tiers, right? Like there's a tier of like anybody can go and get the Travis Scott meal at McDonald's in the drive-thru if it's still in stock and it's $6.
It's just a quarter pounder.
Right.
Like, that's the thing. They've been adding.
It's nothing special. It's nothing special. Like it's literally just a combination of food that already exists. And it's like, then you can go to a site, and because it's his controlled platform, he can sell a t-shirt for like $90 and people will still buy it. And they'll buy the t-shirt for $48 or whatever with shipping, and then they'll flip it on StockX for like $148.
I don't know if you guys saw this. He's also releasing a alcoholic drink.
Is he?
Called like Cacti or something. Like he just
today. Well, really? The music video that just dropped, franchise.
Yeah. So it's like now he got from Fortnite. He got all those like teenage kids.
Yep.
McDonald's. Everyone eats McDonald's. Jordan. Like everyone wears Jordans. And then now you have an alcoholic drink out. Now you're like on like Diddy level. Like you got your own rock almost. Like it's like bro. Like
again, Diddy earned his fortune not just from music, but from like products, business, right? From business. And it's like, I think any of these players, any of these like rappers, if you're seeing what Travis is doing, if you're seeing what KD is doing, what LeBron's doing, like Uninterrupted sells merch now, like they've done some great fundraisers. Like OBJ released a recent boat T-shirt where 100% of the proceeds,
even he has
went to
his
charitable
own podcast
causes.
now.
Yeah, I mean, I think it's like OBJ also another Warzone reference. He is unbelievably good at Warzone. I've played with him like a couple of times. He's
no way.
Crazy good at sniping.
Bro. Hey, me versus OBJ and Russ 1v1. Let's get it. Let's get it. I need the plug.
Dude, he's like never on anymore, but over the summer during the off season.
He's in season right now. That's by the way.
I mean, who knows? He hasn't been getting, there's all this trade drama going on with the Browns and Baker, so who knows where he ends up.
Facts. But I think like Twitch in general is huge. Like even YouTube Twitch. I want to say first Matisse Thybulle with his YouTube videos in the bubble. Like
the bubble vlogs. Shout out to Matisse, shout out to JaVale.
JaVale.
Like even Justin Holiday has one. Like
dude, like like when you think about it, right? Like if in 5 years majority of the rookies coming into the league have the Instagram presence already. Exactly. Like why can't they already have their YouTube channels? Like why can't we literally be following these guys the way we do like the My Player in 2K where it's like
100%.
Their agent, their sister, the best friend, like
100%.
I think that we've only scratched the surface of like a lot of what this content game has to offer, and especially with athletes, like I think slowly the control is going back to them, right? Where it's like there's been this ebb and flow of like, back in the day, you controlled your own message, right? So you literally would make a VHS of your highlights and send it out to colleges. Like that was the thing you did.
Facts.
And then you kind of had this Hoop Mixtape and all these places. Like there were literally like people like Kobe, when he lived in Italy, he had an uncle that used to videotape Lakers games and send it to him, right? And it's like that's how he consumed NBA content. And there was like all of these like Saturday shows like Inside the NBA Jam, like highlight like compilations that were all like sent around that way. And then you had the rise of YouTube where it's like I think that a lot of people are familiar with like Dawkins and like GD Factory and Zemo Pierto and all these like guys on YouTube that would like literally drop like highlights right after the game ended. And they were doing a better job than the official NBA or NFL accounts or any of these.
NBA literally just caught up like a few years back. They haven't.
What's interesting is a lot of these guys have been hired
by
NBA and BR GD. We actually hired him to run House of Highlights, so he does a lot of the
really
clip curation on House of Highlights. Yeah, shout out to House of Highlights too. Omar, I know he's at ESPN, but he's another person that joined BR a few years after I did.
He's also doing some fire stuff at ESPN.
He's like doing some great stuff with SportsCenter. And,
I've been seeing
like SportsCenter. Like you see their captions like everywhere. You're like, oh shit, like he's on here. Like it's just
it's a totally different voice, and I think that there's a change that's happened with the way that we consume a lot of these things. Where it's like the same way that Stuart Scott talked about the cool side of the pillow. Now, like. How good you are at writing captions and making them relatable and helping adding that extra layer of storytelling can literally be the difference between a clip getting like a couple 100,000 views and a couple 100 million. And to have that power and that influence on the like cultural zeitgeist, right? Of like that, like now there's literally moments where it's like Robert Sacre, you could argue, is a well-known name because the videos of him celebrating on the bench and like going crazy and stuff like that have been shared so much on NBA Twitter and stuff like that. Like you can literally change a player's career.
Right.
Like Shaqting has helped JaVale become a bigger name.
Dude, Alex Caruso.
100%.
Alex Caruso is just like the GOAT. Like
Bald Mamba. Bald Mamba.
Yeah.
Well, I think it's interesting, right? Because we live in this meme culture, right? And I think that the best players not only have these great moments on the court, they acknowledge and embrace their effect. And like LeBron, right, with the Arthur stuff, or like even with all of like
Taco Tuesday.
Taco Tuesday, right? Like there's so many things that
even from calling Trump a bum,
dude, 100%.
That's like you. Like LeBron calls him a bum, defends Steph Curry, like all that.
Well, that adds to your star, and I think the best businessmen and the best athletes that have an awareness of this tap into that the same way that like Drake taps in for being a meme, right? Like he literally creates scenes in his music videos that he knows are going to get turned into gifts.
We talk about this so often, but it's like even if you're reading this, it's too late.
Right.
The amount of memes that have come from that font, like
100%.
and you think of Drake, like even now if I see it, I'll be like, oh, it's been a minute since I've listened to that album. Let me check.
Yeah, all the Hotline Bling memes.
Exactly.
Right.
Like even like Kiki, that song. Like I don't even know the name of the song. I just refer to it as the Kiki song. Like, dude, it's just everything with it. It's crazy.
What's crazy is that in 10 years, 20 years, if shit's still popping and we haven't destroyed ourselves, like civilization. Hopefully,
we'll see.
There will be like digital ebooks that kids are reading in class about like music history, right? And like I think meme culture is going to be part of it. Like 100%. Kanye the meme, right? Like early on with the Taylor Swift moment, and then Bound 2, and like his song with Lil Pump, like. Like Lift Yourself is a moment in time where it's so ridiculous, the lyrics being what they are, but like people are going to study about that shit. That's kind of insane to me.
100%.
Literally a meme song that received over 1 million streams. But I mean, at the same time, you have like creators like Cody Ko and like these guys on platforms making really, really good content that's like referencing meme culture or parody culture, but it's just high quality, well done content that everybody kind of appreciates. So like, I kind of love how the industry is kind of collapsing in on itself in that way, where it's like, it doesn't matter what you're creating, even if it's kind of stupid, like if it's good, it'll resonate with people. And like, there's so many, whether it's, even like people like Eric Andre, like I love the content that he makes. And I think it has that similar feel where he's just like, screw it, I'm just going to make what I want to make. And I wish more brands were willing to give the keys to a guy like Omar, right? And like say, screw it, go for it, right? Where it's like, I think the Sacramento Kings have done a great job with their social media presence and like embracing 100%, that voice. 100%. I think more places need to do it. And when the
Wendy's
shout out to Wendy's.
Yeah.
Like, yo.
Like, I think that when you give the keys to these young kids that know what they're doing and speak the voice authentically, that resonates on such a huge level, where it's like, I know that it probably wasn't, some executive that was like, Charlie D'Amelio needs a drink, named after her. It was probably like their kids or somebody, or like some like young intern was like, this girl has 70 million followers. She's drinking Dunkin' Donuts all the time. We got to do something with her.
Yeah.
100%.
Like,
for sure.
I think 100%. SeatGeek and David Dobrik is the other great example.
Yes.
Like
definitely.
The videos that they do where, we're going to take my friends to the Super Bowl or buy this guy a car.
Right.
And like their brand is now associated with that type of video. And like people make parodies of David Dobrik where it's like, make sure to use my SeatGeek promo code. And it's like, the ad has become part of the meme. Like,
Facts.
How cool do you have to be to where people are parodying your ad, right? Like, I mean, Michael Jordan had that with Spike Lee and Mars Blackman, and now David Dobrik has that with SeatGeek.
Yeah, even like Cactus Jack sent me such a meme. Like, just imagine saying that with a straight face at a McDonald's.
100%.
Like, you can't. But it's like, also I think what Travis Scott is doing is he's like partnering up with brands that don't even need the promo.
100%.
Like Jordan Brand doesn't need a promo. McDonald's doesn't need a promo. Fortnite doesn't need a promo. Like at the time, Fortnite didn't need the promo. Now maybe, but like, and now with PS5, everyone's buying a PS5.
Well, to me, it's like these partnerships that make a ton of sense because I think that what brands are realizing now is that McDonald's has a physical touch points, right? Like there's a McDonald's in every single town. Travis Scott has audience in every single town, like all around the world. And being able to take advantage of that, right? Where it's like, outside of that, I know that there's probably a lot of people that never would have gone to McDonald's this year. Like, I know, like, there's people that specifically went just because of Travis Scott.
Yeah, 100%.
Yeah.
Even to steal one of those posters, I'm sure they,
100%. And it's like, to have that level of influence, like, and to be smart enough to know that you should capitalize on that and monetize it while you have the opportunity.
Mm-hmm.
I think that it's weird because back in the early 2000s, I think when you saw, and part of this was just because it was jarring at first, like when you first saw the 15-second pre-roll ads on YouTube, you were like, what the hell is this?
Yeah.
But like, I think similarly, when you saw like the beats in every single music video, you were kind of like, oh, this is kind of out of place, but like, it's kind of cool. And like, they weren't as well integrated as they are now. Mm-hmm. But like, you look at that music video that Travis just dropped yesterday for Franchise, it's shot at Michael Jordan's house. It has footage from The Last Dance.
For Nolan.
So keep in mind, like, he also has a deal with Netflix where he launched his documentary. They're carrying The Last Dance. Like, he has a Jordan brand deal. He's able to get his merch in there. He's able to get his shoes in there. Like, he's promoting his drink in there. Like, literally, like, it's insane.
Yeah.
The entire video is just paychecks. It's dollar signs. And even if you go look at all this content that Kylie drops for her makeup, she'll use like a Travis Scott song in the background.
Yeah.
Like people will be listening to that snippet on repeat. Like Highest in the Room was used for like that Kendall and Kylie makeup line. And like I remember literally listening to the YouTube like snippet of that on repeat before the song came out. I was like, this needs to drop. This needs to drop.
Thanks.
We actually recreated a beat and added to the snippet so that we could use that in like a piece of content. Like that's how much we love that like,
that's crazy.
Sample. And there's this guy, Mikey Navarro. He's super, super talented with like production and stuff like that. One of the projects that me and him actually collaborated on and he came up with recently that we dropped was this 1 hour long lo-fi basketball, like chill beats to study to.
That's always recommended to me.
Dude, it was a crazy project to work on because we literally were like finding highlights where it's like, let's take all of the sounds of like Steph Curry talking about San Francisco and turn that into a song, like a lo-fi beat. Or like, there's literally a song based on Shaq saying barbecue chicken on TNT and all the times that he said that. And just going through like archives of YouTube footage and finding those little samples and turning it into music was such a fun process. But like, if you would have told me at 12 years old that I would be looking up obscure like Mike Breen videos on YouTube to chop them up to turn into a lo-fi remix, I wouldn't have believed you, right? So like even the fact that these jobs are a thing or like this industry exists, I think is amazing. And I think that we've only scratched the surface. Like there's going to be more and more opportunities like to do this kind of stuff. And I think that if you're smart, you're going to learn like the skill set or like do your own things. Like I love, people that do their own podcasts, people that do their own like just go out and shoot videos. Like going back to Lyrical Lemonade, like one thing that he always talks about is like he just went and started shooting stuff. And it's like, one Juice World video goes viral, then Little Tekka and like all like it's just its own machine where it's like you keep doing it, but like the reason that you do it wasn't for the numbers, is because you enjoyed doing it in the first place. So the numbers are just gravy, like it's just extra. Like
I mean, we recently. Oh wait, first of all, shout out Twitch. This is a perfect time to shout Twitch out. But I mean, we started doing those weekly. Like we just go live on Twitch with like one of my other friends who has his own podcast. But it's like the dope thing with that is that we tell our friends to come on, like come through, just watch. And it's like a lot of it is just us like talking music most of the time, or like local news, whatever. But then it's like one of our friends is gonna do some goofy shit. Like the chat's gonna say something funny. We're gonna react to that, and it's like. Like right now, the past couple have just been like an hour long, but now we're thinking like, dude, let's just do it for like 2-3 hours. Right. It's like we're gonna be doing that anyway. That's how this started. Like me and Paris, we would be talking anyway. We're like, fuck it, let's record it.
100%.
Yeah, that's the exact conversation we had. We're like, yo, some days, literally like once a week, we just call each other, talk for a few hours. So it's like, yo, why don't we just put out this content somewhere? Yeah,
exactly.
100%. And
So it's
I think you never know who's going to relate to it.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Like that's the beauty of this stuff. There might be some like working in design and like one thing when I started this art collective, right? Like, there were people that I was reaching out to who didn't speak English, and I was using like Google Translate, hopping on WeChat, and like communicating with somebody in Taiwan, right? And like, fast forward 7 years later, I end up hiring this dude to come work with me at BR, and he moves to New York. And like, there's folks from like Poland and Australia and like, South Africa and like Brazil and all these different places. And the common language was like this art that we were making, right? And like our love of the NBA. And it's like, dude, I might not speak Mandarin, but like when I see Ray Allen, hit that shot against the Spurs, like I'm going just as crazy as you are.
Yeah.
And so like, I think the beauty of that moment and being able to share that and create content around it, and having that relatable thing that brought us together. And like, going back to what we were saying earlier, like we never went into doing any of this stuff thinking about making money. But as we started doing more of this stuff, like Tyson Beck, my co-founder, he now designs a bunch of these trading cards for like Topps. And like the trading card game, it's been going crazy.
Oh, it's been going insane.
Yeah.
Gary V, shout out Gary
V. He's been pushing that out.
I almost joined Gary V. I almost started working for him a couple of years ago.
Oh, really?
Yeah, when I was in New York, I was thinking about it. And
VaynerMedia.
VaynerMedia, they had an opening. And I think it's so interesting when he talks about sports cards. He talks about how it's come in cycles, right? Like there have been 4 cycles of sports cards, and we're in another one right now. And I think the one interesting thing now that's different than any other time period is this connection that you have to players, right? Where it's like, back then, you might not know who a rookie was outside of like the scouting report that you saw, like, during the draft on the ESPN broadcast for like 30 seconds. But now you might be able to like know a player coming up and you'll be like, no, I know that this guy is going to be like, imagine like 5 years ago, you're the only person that's really big on like Donovan Mitchell. And like, he's going to be like really good. And so you go out and back then, buy all of his rookie cards almost as an investment. Like to me, the same way that Gary V talks about, like, that's no different than somebody investing $500 in Google stock back in 1997. One of my favorite Shaq stories, actually. He talked about this at the Turner All-Star party when we were in LA. And he was talking about how when he first came to the Lakers, he was in the lobby. I think it was the Beverly Hills Hotel. And he had just come from Orlando and he was going to sign his contract with Jerry West. And so he was at the hotel, like everything was being worked out. And he was sitting downstairs in the hotel lobby. And some guy is down there and he's like, can you please watch my kids for me for a little bit? I need to run upstairs. Like, had to get something or some sort of like, yo, can you help me out? Can you do me a solid? And I don't know if he realized that it was Shaq or not, but this guy asked him to entertain his kids. And Shaq being Shaq, he's like, I'm going to have fun. Like, he's a big kid. Like, he's just entertaining, playing with these like 4-year-old and 5-year-old. And the guy comes back downstairs. He's like, thank you so much. Like, how can I ever thank you? And Shaq's like, oh, don't mention it. Don't mention it. He's like, actually, I work for this little startup. I have a tip for you. And the guy ended up being Eric Schmidt from Google and basically gave Shaq a tip to invest in Google early on. And he put like $200K in really, really early on. And was one of the big parts of his portfolio, his stock portfolio, moving forward. And like part of what inspired him to get like ownership stakes and like all of these, like, he's not just Papa John's brand ambassador. He like made sure to work in the deal, like equity stakes, and like it's not a accident that you see him in General and like Icy High, Buick, like every single ad. Like Shaq's really trying to be like that businessman. Same as Travis, where it's like, how can I take this to the next level? And it's like Shaq hasn't played for almost a decade, and yet he's on more commercials than like a lot of NBA players that are really good. Like Jokic
you might honestly have more commercials
amazing,
than
but
Giannis.
I think you're right.
like dead ass.
100% he does. He does. It's not even a question. He does for sure.
He has more commercials than Harden. Like he has more commercials than Giannis. Like, and it's crazy. Like he's literally got as many commercials as like CP3 and LeBron and like.
Yeah. Yep. I would say maybe CP3 has as many as Shaq. All those State Farm commercials. But
yeah. Paul, man. They need to bring Cliff Paul back.
Cliff Paul, damn, yeah. But like Chris Paul has some deals though. Like, a lot of people don't realize he invested big in Beyond Burgers.
Oh dang.
Oh yeah, they IPO'd last year.
Dude, yeah, he's made such a significant amount of money from that. And he recently invested in Samsung Players TV. So the company that made Kyrie's Breonna Taylor doc. He's doing, head of the Players Union. He's like supporting all these other like brands. Like he's buying. We talked earlier about how the tunnel pregame has become such a big like fashion runway type thing. Shout out to Chris Paul because he's been wearing the merch from a lot of HCBUs. Or HBCUs, and just giving props to all these schools that are underappreciated and just need more shine, and like seeing him rock that stuff and make an impact and just like shine a spotlight the way that he has. I think he's such an OG, and I think it'll. Speaking of Giannis, I kind of hope the Bucks trade for him.
Yeah, dude.
You think
Giannis will be fire? All right, guys. Sorry to cut it so abruptly, but as you can see, this episode is already super, super long. But we had another basically 2-hour discussion with Ishaan, even more 2 hours of this dope conversation. So I'm gonna actually be splitting it. This will be part 1 of episode 73. There'll be part 2 coming out Friday. So be sure to check in on that. We'll be talking more music, more basketball, more of that good stuff, man. But yeah, as always, be sure to check out Ishaan, check out all of my socials, all of Parsons' socials. And with that, also Thursday. So tomorrow we'll be live on Twitch at 8 p.m. Central. So definitely come through, check in. And then, part 2 will be coming out Friday. So catch you guys later. Peace.